The corridor was silent. Only the soft hum of old machines echoed through the forgotten research station. Evan walked slowly, his boots pressing dust from the metal floor. He had worked here for 6 months, repairing broken wires and rusty doors. No one visited this place anymore. It was a graveyard floating between stars, but tonight felt different. Something cold crawled through the air, as if the station was holding its breath. Evan's flashlight cut through the darkness. He checked the last storage bay, a room that had been locked for decades. The door hissed open after he forced the manual release. Inside, broken panels and shattered crates lay everywhere. He stepped carefully between them, his heart beating faster for no reason he could understand. Then he saw it. At the back of the room stood a tall glass chamber. It was hidden behind bent steel sheets and tangled wires, like the station had tried to bury it. The glass was fogged and cracked at the corners. Dim lights glowed on its base, blinking slowly like dying fireflies. Evan moved closer. He wiped away the dust from the glass and froze. There was someone inside. A woman. Her skin was pale like moonlight, her long silver hair floating softly around her face. Her body was frozen in mid-motion, as if she had tried to reach out just before the cold stopped her. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Her lips were slightly parted as though she had been screaming when time itself turned against her. Evan's breath caught in his throat. She was not human. Her ears were long and thin like delicate crystal shards. Tiny glowing patterns marked her skin, fading in and out beneath the ice. She looked fragile, like glass wrapped inside glass. And yet even frozen, she seemed alive. Too alive to be left like this. A small screen on the side of the chamber flickered. Evan wiped it clean with his sleeve. Words appeared, faded, then returned. Specimen, Lysera. Status, do not revive. Evan frowned. Do not revive. Who had left her here and why? He tapped the console. The date logs flashed. She had been sealed inside this chamber 73 years ago. 73 years. Alone. Silent. Forgotten. A cold shiver ran through him. The station had many secrets. Old weapons. Unfinished experiments, but this was different. This was not a machine or a failed project. This was a living being, trapped and left to die behind locked doors. He looked at her again. Even through the frost, he could see her face clearly. She did not look like a monster. She looked peaceful, sad, and lost. A faint beeping sound came from the base of the chamber. Evan crouched and stared. It was a heartbeat monitor. The line was almost flat, but not fully. It rose, weak and slow. Every few seconds his eyes widened. She was still alive. Evan stood back, his mind spinning. He should report this. He should call command and let them handle it. That was the rule. That was what he had been trained to do. But he knew what command would do. They would erase her. They would shut off the chamber and write her name into a forgotten file. They would make sure she never woke again. Evan's fingers trembled as he reached out and touched the glass. It was ice cold. The frost bit into his glove. He imagined what she had seen before she was frozen. Did she see the faces of the ones who locked her away? Did she scream for help as the cold closed in? He stepped back, breathing hard. This was not his fight. He was just a repair worker. He had no power, no weapons, no authority, and yet he could not walk away. He turned off his flashlight and stood in the darkness, listening to the faint hum of the chamber. The room felt alive now, like it had been waiting for someone to come. "Who are you?" he whispered, though she could not hear him. The heartbeat monitor blinked once. Just once. A small, weak sign of life. Evan closed his eyes. He knew what this meant. He knew this would change everything. He opened his eyes again, and something inside them had changed too. A spark. A decision. He slowly backed out of the room and sealed the door behind him. He walked down the corridor, but his mind stayed behind, trapped in that glass prison with her. Tonight, he had seen something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten, and tomorrow, he would come back. Evan could not sleep. He lay on his thin bunk, staring at the ceiling of his quarters, listening to the soft rattle of the station's air vents. The image of the frozen woman burned behind his eyes. Her pale face, her silver hair caught in mid-motion, the lonely words on the screen. Do not revive. No one had spoken to him in days. The other crew had left months ago and only drones worked in the empty halls now. He was supposed to just fix things and send status reports. But now there was something buried under this place. Something alive. Something someone had wanted to erase. He rolled over and sat up. His hands were shaking. He knew this station had been part of the war, the old human-alien conflict that ended before he was born. He had read stories all about heroes and victory, but no one ever mentioned prisoners locked in glass. He had to know who she was. He had to know why they froze her. The control room was dark when he entered. Dust lay thick on the consoles and cracked screens blinked weakly. Evan moved fast, his heart pounding. He opened the central database, a giant archive built into the station's core. Most files were locked behind old military firewalls. His access badge wasn't enough. He frowned, pulled out a data spike from his belt and jammed it into the port. Sparks hissed. Lines of old code crawled across the screen. Security alerts flashed, but the network was so ancient it barely resisted. After minutes of tense silence, the system cracked open like an old rusted door. "Come on," he whispered. He searched for her name. Lysera. At first nothing. Then a hidden tag appeared. Archive classified, red label. Evan opened it. A series of files loaded. Their dates stretched across the war years. Most of them were blank, wiped clean. But fragments remained like broken glass scattered across the floor. He read the first line. Subject Lysera of the Erythian Mindclade. Status high cognitive threat. High cognitive threat? Another fragment showed an old photograph. Lysera stood beside human officers at a peace summit. She was smiling. Everyone else in the picture was smiling too. Evan's eyes narrowed. Why would a peace delegate be called a threat? He opened a corrupted audio file. Static buzzed, then voices cracked through. She speaks of unity, dangerous influence. If the soldiers listen, remove her before she turns them. Then silence. Another document popped up. This one was a sealed order from command. The words were sharp and cold. Contain the Erythian immediately, freeze, no record. No trial. Evan's mouth went dry, no record. No trial. They hadn't punished her for a crime. They had buried her because they feared her voice. They feared her peace. His hands clenched into fists. The war had been bloody. Millions died. He remembered the history lessons. How victory was called glorious, how humans were told they saved the galaxy from chaos. But what if it had all been a lie? What if people like Lysera had tried to stop it, and were silenced? Evan scrolled through the last file. It was heavily encrypted, full of blacked-out words. But at the bottom, one line survived. If revived, terminate. The words burned in his mind. If revived, terminate. Someone had planned her death not just once, but forever. Even if someone found her again, they wanted her gone. He sat back in the chair, shaking. The screen's cold light painted his face pale. If he reported her, command would delete every trace of these files. They would send soldiers to finish what they started. But if he stayed silent, he looked at the clock. Nearly 0300 hours. Outside the viewing window, the stars hung still and cold. This station had become a grave, and she was the only one still breathing inside it. Evan pulled the data spike out. Sparks faded. He erased the search logs from the console and shut the system down. His chest rose and fell fast as he stood. His boots echoed down the empty corridor while his mind screamed with questions. Who was Lysera really? What had she done or refused to do that made her so dangerous? And why, after 73 years, was her heartbeat still strong enough to defy death itself? Back in his room, Evan opened his small notebook. He wrote one word across the page in shaking letters. Innocent? He stared at it. He didn't know if it was true, but he knew one thing, and he could not walk away now. He could not let her die, not without knowing the truth. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow I will see her again. Tomorrow I will wake the ghost in the glass. The station slept. Every corridor was dark, every machine silent. Only the distant groan of old metal echoed through the hollow decks. It was past midnight when Evan walked toward the locked storage bay. He moved like a shadow, each step careful and quiet, as if the walls themselves were listening. He had not stopped thinking about her, Lysera, since he read the forbidden files. The words still echoed in his mind. Contain, freeze, no record. No trial, And that last line, if revived, terminate. They had feared her not for violence but for her voice, for her mind, and they had buried her alive to silence her forever. Evan reached the old security door. It stood like a tombstone in the silent hall. He slid a bypass chip into the lock. Lights blinked red, then green. The door hissed open. Cold air spilled out like a ghost's breath. The glass chamber stood waiting in the darkness. She was still there, pale, fragile, beautiful, trapped inside her frozen moment. Her hair floated around her like strands of silver smoke. Frost sparkled across her skin like tiny stars. Evan's chest tightened. He stepped closer. The small heartbeat monitor still blinked. Weak, slow, defiant. She was alive. Still fighting. Still waiting. He pressed his gloved hand against the glass. The cold bit through the fabric. "I found your truth," he whispered. "They lied about you." Of course, she could not hear him. But the words were for him, not her. They were a promise. Evan crouched beside the base panel and opened it carefully. The chamber was powered by a small core buried under the floor. He connected his toolkit to it and began rerouting current from the station's spare cells. Lines of code scrolled across his wrist screen. Temperature warnings flashed. He ignored them. Slowly, he increased the heat flow, just a little. Just enough to wake the ice. Steam hissed inside the glass like a sigh. Suddenly, alarms flashed on his wrist. Power grid unstable, unauthorized drain detected. Evan cursed under his breath. The system had noticed. He worked faster. Rerouting the chamber to a backup power line meant for emergency drones. The station's old circuits groaned as the glass began to glow, faintly with inner light. He looked up. A drop of water slid down the inside of the chamber. The ice was melting. Then the chamber twitched. The screen flickered. A soft hum rose like a heartbeat turning into a drum. The monitor line jumped stronger than before. Evan's heart raced. "Come on, come on." The frost on her eyelashes cracked. Her fingers trembled only once like a dying star flickering back to life. Evan's breath caught. She moved. Just a little. Just enough to prove she was still fighting. A loud crash echoed from far down the corridor. Evan froze. The power drain had triggered the maintenance drones. He could hear their metal claws clanging against the floors as they searched. They were slow, but they had cameras. If they found him here, everything would end. He looked at the half-melted chamber, then back at the dark hallway. He could run. He could shut it all down and pretend he was never here, but then she would die again. No, he stayed. He disconnected his toolkit and switched the chamber into hidden standby mode. The glass stopped glowing and the hum softened to a faint whisper. The ice was weaker now, but still holding her like a cage. He placed his hand on the glass one more time. "I'll come back," he whispered. "I'll finish this." Her chest rose just slightly. He almost thought he imagined it, but no. It was real. Life. Evan sealed the room and slipped back into the hallway just as the drones arrived. Their cold red eyes swept the area, scanning for energy leaks. They passed right by him, unaware of the miracle hidden behind the steel wall. He reached his quarters and collapsed on his bunk, heart still hammering. His hands smelled of frost and machine oil. His mind burned with one thought. He had seen her move. She was waking. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would bring more power cells. Tomorrow, he would break the glass completely. Tomorrow, he would set her free, and once she opened her eyes, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The storm began inside Evan's chest long before it began in the station's walls. All day he waited, pretending to work, pretending to eat. His hands fixed old wiring while his mind drifted back to the hidden chamber. He saw her again and again, frozen, fragile, almost breathing. Tonight he would break her chains and nothing could stop him. The corridors were silent when he moved. He carried a heavy case filled with stolen power cells, a small plasma cutter strapped to his belt. Every camera on the route had been looped to replay old footage. Hours of planning compressed into one reckless plan, the door to the forgotten. Bay hissed open. Cold air rolled out like ancient breath. There she was, still locked in time. Lysera. Evan set down the power cells, his movements careful, almost reverent. The chamber's glass glimmered like dark ice under his lamp. He placed his hand on it. It was less cold now. The ice inside had thinned like spiderwebs. Through the frost, he saw her lips twitch slightly, as if whispering a word she had been holding for 73 years. He connected the power cells one by one. The chamber hummed louder, its heartbeat monitor jumping faster. The glass vibrated softly, like something trapped inside was pushing back. Lights on the floor panels began to flash red. The station's system had noticed the surge. He had minutes, maybe less. Evan keyed in the override code he had stolen from the main console. A voice boomed from the old intercom, deep and mechanical. Security breach detected. Containment protocol initiated. He ignored it. Steam hissed inside the glass. Cracks laced across its surface like lightning. Then the chamber screamed. Not with sound, but with pressure. A sharp, sudden jolt that threw Evan to his knees. The glass bulged outward. The frost shattered into glittering dust. She fell forward. The glass broke like thunder. Shards burst across the floor, skittering like angry stars. Cold mist wrapped around Evan's body as he caught her before she hit the ground. She was warm. So warm. Her breath fluttered against his neck. Weak but real. He had done it. She was alive. The intercom roared again. Unauthorized release detected. All security units deploying. Heavy metal footsteps thundered down the corridors. The drones were coming. Evan pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her trembling body. Her eyes were half open, glowing faint silver. She murmured something soft and broken, words in a language older than the station's bones. Shh, Evan whispered. I've got you. The first drone clattered into the hall outside, red eyes scanning. Evan grabbed the plasma cutter and slammed the bay door controls. The door sealed just as the drone fired a flash beam that scorched the wall. He tossed the cutter back onto his belt and lifted her in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, like air wrapped in silk. He ran. The station howled around him as alarms blared. Escape attempt detected. Lockdown initiated. Metal shutters slammed down along the main corridors. Evan ducked into a side shaft, the maintenance tunnel he had mapped earlier. Pipes hissed overhead. Steam burned his arms. He didn't care. He kept running. Her faint heartbeat thudded against his chest, guiding him like a drum in the dark. At last he reached the cargo bay. A single battered sled sat waiting, half-broken, barely holding fuel. It was enough. He laid her gently on it, securing her with scraps of cloth. She stirred, silver eyes flickering open for a heartbeat. Her voice cracked out of dry lips. Why, help me. Evan's throat tightened. Because no one else would, he said. The door behind them exploded. Drones poured through, metal limbs slashing the air. Evan jumped onto the sled and slammed the thruster controls. The old engines roared. Fire sprayed from the vents. The sled shot forward, smashing through the emergency barrier and out into the launch tunnel. Drones chased them, beams slicing through the darkness. Sparks rained as shots hit the walls around him, but the sled was fast and faster than anything. Left on this dying station, they tore through the tunnel like a streak of lightning. Then they were free. The station's outer doors cracked open, and the sled blasted into open space. Stars flooded Evan's eyes. The alarms faded behind them, swallowed by the endless black. He looked down at her. Lysera's breathing was steady now, her silver hair drifting in the zero-gravity breeze. The frost on her lashes had melted. She was alive, free, and the chains of 73 years now floated behind them, as shattered dust among the stars. Silence. For the first time in hours, there were no alarms, no metal claws chasing them, no voice warning of death. Only the soft hum of the old sled gliding through space, and the endless stars drifting like frozen sparks around them. Evan's hands trembled on the controls. His heart still pounded like a hammer in his chest. Every breath felt sharp, as if his body still hadn't realized they had escaped. He looked down. Lysera lay across the sled's flat surface, wrapped in his jacket. Her silver hair floated gently in the zero gravity, glowing in the faint cabin lights. Her breathing was slow, soft, but steady now. Not the shallow gasps from the glass prison. She was alive and free. Evan set the sled on autopilot and opened the storage box behind him. Inside were 2 emergency med kits, dried food packs, and a thermal blanket. His hands shook as he opened the med kit. He worked gently, cleaning the frost burns from her skin, placing heat pads on her chest and wrists. Her skin was cool but no longer ice cold. He whispered as he worked, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe to comfort her. Maybe to comfort himself. "You're safe now," he said. "No one can reach you here." She stirred faintly, her lips parting. Her eyes fluttered open. They were the color of starlight, silver and soft, yet bright enough to pierce him. Evan froze. For a moment she only stared at him, her gaze distant, confused. Then her lips moved. "Where am I?" Her voice was fragile, like a cracked bell ringing in deep water. "You're on a cargo sled," he said quietly. "We escaped the station." Her eyes blinked slowly. A single tear floated off her cheek and drifted into the air. "Escaped?" she whispered. "Yes," Evan said. "You're free." She closed her eyes again, but her lips curled in the faintest smile. "No one ever comes back for us," she murmured. "I did," Evan said. Silence followed. But it wasn't heavy. It was soft, warm, like a blanket in the cold void. Evan turned back to the controls. They were heading toward the outer drift, a quiet sector filled with dead satellites and broken freighters, far from patrol routes. He needed to find shelter, somewhere safe where she could heal. The old sled's fuel meter blinked low. He frowned. They had enough for maybe 2 jumps. After that they would be stranded, but it didn't matter. He would find a way. He had brought her this far. He would bring her further. Behind him she shifted. Evan turned quickly, her eyes were open again, brighter now. She sat up weakly, clutching his jacket around her shoulders. "Why? Did you break the glass?" she asked. Evan hesitated. The true answer felt too large, too heavy. "Because you were alive," he said finally, "and no one deserves to die forgotten." She stared at him for a long moment. Her gaze felt ancient, deep, as if weighing the shape of his soul. Then she said softly, "Most humans feared us. You did not." "I was afraid," Evan admitted, "but I was more afraid of being like them." Her lips curved again, not quite a smile, but close. A sharp beep broke the quiet. Evan glanced at the radar, a patrol signal far behind. The drones had called for reinforcements. They were still being hunted. "Hold on," Evan muttered. He grabbed the sled's throttle. The engine howled as he rerouted all remaining power to the boosters. The sled shook violently, metal rattling like bones. Stars blurred into silver streaks as they shot through the void. Windless pressure pressed them flat as the sled dove between shattered satellites. Broken panels spun past like knives. A laser beam streaked past their tail, missing by inches. Lysera held onto his arm, eyes wide but calm. "Do you trust me?" Evan shouted over the roaring engine. "Yes," she said. The word was soft, but it was steady. He jerked the sled downward into the debris field. The enemy signal scattered behind them, confused by the floating wreckage. Evan pushed the last fuel cell into the drive. The sled screamed forward, then vanished into the shadow of a hollow asteroid. Darkness wrapped around them like a cloak. Silence returned. The radar went blank. They had escaped again. Evan sagged back. Shaking, Lysera still held his arm. Her hand was warmer now. She looked at him, and this time her smile was real. "You risked everything," she whispered. "I'd do it again," he said. Outside, the stars turned slowly around the dead asteroid. Inside the sled, 2 fugitives sat in silence, breathing the same cold air, sharing the same small spark of life in the endless black. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. For the first time in 73 years, she was not alone. Time passed like drifting dust. The sled lay hidden inside the hollow asteroid. Engines silent, lights dimmed to near darkness. Outside, the stars spun slowly around the black stone. Inside, the air was thin and cold but calm. The first real calm since Evan had shattered the glass. Lysera slept under the thermal blanket, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. Evan sat nearby, knees drawn to his chest, staring at her. She was healing, and yet questions burned in his mind like fire. Who was she really? Why had they called her dangerous? Why had they chosen to bury her voice? Hours later, she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing silver like starlight through water. She sat up, clutching the blanket. Her movements were stronger now, steady instead of trembling. Evan offered her a water pack. She sipped it slowly, never taking her eyes off him. "I remember your face," she said softly. Evan blinked. "You do?" "When the ice cracked," she whispered, "I saw your eyes. They were afraid, but they stayed." Evan lowered his gaze. "I was afraid, But not of you. Lysera tilted her head. Then what? Of the people who locked you away, he said. Of becoming like them. She studied him for a long moment, silent. Then she said, You deserve the truth. She placed her hand gently on his forehead. A soft silver light pulsed from her skin. Evan gasped as the world around him dissolved into mist and rebuilt itself. He was no longer inside the sled. He stood in a vast crystal hall under a blood-red sky. Towers rose like frozen flames around him. A younger Lysera stood at the center, speaking to a crowd of both humans and Erythians. We can stop the war, she said, her voice echoing like music. We do not need to burn each other to feel safe. The crowd cheered. But shadows moved at the edges, men in black uniforms, their faces hard. Then the scene cracked like glass. The cheering became screaming. The red sky turned to fire. Explosions tore through the towers. Evan saw soldiers dragging Lysera through the smoke, her hands bound, her face streaked with ash. She shouted something, not fear but defiance. A voice hissed behind her. Erase her. Erase peace. War must continue. The vision spun again. Now Lysera lay inside the cryo chamber. Humans in officer uniforms sealed the glass. One of them whispered. She could have ended it. That is her crime, the chamber hissed. Frost swallowed her eyes. Darkness slammed down. Evan jolted back into the sled, gasping. His chest felt like it had been crushed. His skin was cold with sweat. Lysera's hand lowered from his forehead. Her silver eyes glowed in the dim light. They feared me, she said quietly, because I wanted to end their war. They needed an enemy, so they made me one. Evan stared at her silent. They told the galaxy my people betrayed the peace talks, she continued, but it was the humans who broke them. To keep power, to keep fear alive, her voice cracked. My people were erased. Our cities burned. Our names deleted from the star charts. I was the last. Evan's hands clenched. They lied to everyone. They turned truth into ashes. Yes, Lysera whispered. For a long moment they said nothing. Only the slow hiss of the sled's vents filled the silence. Evan looked down at his hands. We can show them, he said slowly. Your memories. They're still in your mind. I can record them. Broadcast them to every colony net. Lysera's eyes widened. If they see, they will kill you too. Maybe, Evan said. But if they never see, they will keep killing the truth. Lysera gazed at him long and silent. Then she nodded once. I will trust you with my memories, she said. Evan met her eyes. And I'll protect them with my life, they began. Lysera closed her eyes, silver light blooming softly from her temples as Evan connected his recorder. Images swirled like galaxies, her childhood under crystal towers, her first peace speech, the burning of her world, the moment the glass closed around her. Evan's hands shook as he stored them all. Every lie the war had built was crumbling in his palms. When it was done, Lysera leaned against the wall, exhausted but calm. Evan sealed the data drive and slipped it inside his jacket. They can't bury you again, he said. Lysera's silver eyes glimmered. Then let us burn their silence. Far outside, unseen, patrol beacons swept through the stars, hunting them. Evan powered up the sled's engines again. The truth was awake now, and the galaxy would never be the same. The void was no longer quiet. Warning lights pulsed red across the sled's console. Patrol signals flared on the radar like angry stars, closing in fast from 3 directions. The hunters had found them. Evan tightened his grip on the controls. The small drive inside his jacket felt heavier than stone. It held Lysera's entire life. Her memories, her truth, the proof that could burn the lies of an entire war. They had only one chance. If he failed now, she would vanish again. The silence would win. Lysera stood behind him, wrapped in the thermal blanket, her silver eyes steady. The fear was gone from her face now. What replaced it was sharper. Resolve. They will destroy us, she said quietly. Only if they catch us. Evan answered. They will not stop. Neither will I. He fired the engines. The sled screamed forward, bursting from the hollow asteroid into the open void. Stars streaked past like silver rain. Behind them, 3 heavy patrol ships cut through the dark, their weapons glowing like caged suns. Alarms shrieked as beams scorched the sled's hull. Metal panels tore loose and spun into space, shields down to 30%. The console rasped. Evan didn't slow. He aimed toward the swirling edge of a collapsing wormhole. Violent spiral of broken light twisting space like glass. Lysira's eyes widened. That path will kill us. Or free us, Evan said. They dived. The sled shuddered violently as gravity fractured around them. Waves of light folded like torn cloth. Space bent and howled. Evan fought the controls, arms burning, teeth clenched. The patrol ships followed. Plasma fire sliced through the spiral, exploding just behind the sled. Upload the data, Evan gasped. Lysira moved quickly, placing her hands on the recorder. Silver light poured from her palms, igniting the console in bright threads of code. Broadcasting on all colony channels, she whispered. Do it. The wormhole crushed them from every side. Sparks burst from the control panels. The sled spun, tumbling end over end, and then a blinding flash across the galaxy. Every comm screen flickered. On mining ships, cargo haulers, city stations, and distant colonies, soldiers and workers paused as their screens dissolved into silver light. Lysira's memories poured across the stars, her peace speeches, her people's laughter under crystal towers, the screams as fire consumed their world, the cold order to erase her, the long years of silence inside the glass. Her voice echoed everywhere. I was never your enemy. I wanted only peace. Billions watched in silence. The truth tore through the dark like dawn. Back inside the wormhole, the sled exploded out the far side in a burst of fractured light. Silence fell. The patrol ships were gone, torn apart by the collapsing spiral. Only the small sled drifted onward, smoke trailing from its scorched hull. Evan coughed, blood on his lip, but he was smiling. Lysira stood beside him, eyes wet, her face glowing with something more powerful than fire. Did they see? She whispered. Yes, Evan breathed. They all saw. They limped through space until they crash-landed on a quiet moon. Dust rose in slow silver clouds around them. The sled finally died, its engine sparking once before going dark forever. Evan crawled out, coughing. Lysira followed, barefoot, her silver hair glowing under the pale light of the twin suns. They stood on the cracked plain, looking at the endless stars above. For the first time, no chains wrapped around her. No walls of glass stood between her and the sky. You could leave, Evan said softly. Find your people again, if any survived. Lysira looked at him. I will stay, she said. Evan turned, surprised.
Stay with me?
Her lips curved in a gentle smile. I was buried in silence for 73 years, she whispered. But you heard me. You shattered it. My place is with you. Evan felt something break loose in his chest. Not fear, not grief, something lighter. Hope. He reached out. She took his hand. Together, they walked across the moon's empty plain as the twin suns rose, painting the sky in gold. Behind them lay the wreckage of war. Ahead of them stretched a new future, wide and unwritten, and far above, across every world. Her voice still echoed, a song of truth that could never be caged again.